I need this to be clear. We hear a lot of tropes about uh, replacement theory from white racists in America today, right? And I need you to understand the reason why that resonates so strongly with Europeans is because Europeans has always used immigration as a means of replacing an indigenous people from the area that they once inhabited and claiming that place as if it had originally been their own. And when I began to do a lot of research and studying the history of our people and reading between the lines and learning etymology, which is the study of words, I began to find that blacks had a strong presence in Europe, right? I began to learn that a lot of black rulers in Europe, a lot of rulers in Europe were black. I began to learn that blacks built a lot of the buildings in Europe, the palaces and things that they adorn and that they show of white people were actually built by blacks.
The year is 1492. Christopher Columbus is about to embark on his world-shattering voyage to the Americas. And on his way to the coast, he stops off here at Granada. He's the honoured guest at a ceremony hosted by the King and Queen of Spain, Ferdinand and Isabella. They are celebrating a grand victory. Up until this day, Granada had been ruled by Muslims. But Isabella has managed to wrestle control from them.
Now you have to change your perception of Muslim. They're talking about Berbers. Berbers were blacks. Moors, they call them Berbers or Moors. This is who they were talking about that conquered and ran Spain. They saying they entered Spain in about 700 AD. They went the Berber Muslims and the Arab Muslims went to war around that same time. Let's be clear. If you notice that the Moors went into Spain, they believe 700 AD. The Berber revolt, where the Arabs and the black Muslims went to war against one another, was around 740. So around the same time, they was warring from 740 to 743. The Arabs and both the Berber Muslims revolted against the Arab Muslims who had become oppressive with the knowledge that they had received from black people in the first place, right? Trying to overtax the blacks and other issues that the blacks did not believe in, and we went to war, right? So when they say the Arab Muslims, that is disingenuous and is another way to take credit away from deeply melanated skinned people who ran Europe. Let's be clear about that. It is clear that this was the date that it's called the Berber Revolt. That's what they called the blacks, the Berbers, the black ones. And that happened 740, 743. So when they talk about Muslims in Europe, they're talking about blacks. When they're talking about Islam in Europe, they're talking about blacks. They're not talking about the Arabs. But in order to steal your identity and to make you feel negative, feel like you have not achieved anything throughout history, they accredit that to Arabs. So there's a very clear distinction. These are not Arabs. These are black Muslim nations. Be clear about this.
Ferdinand and Isabella's victory marks a turning point for Spain and for Europe. The Middle Ages are over, and the West is about to embark on a new epoch of power and discovery. We tend to think of this as the beginning of an era. In fact, it's the climax of a forgotten chapter in European history, the rise and fall of Islam in the West. Propaganda, sparked by the Crusades, has given us an enduring image: the diabolical Moor, a dark-skinned, savage, alien enemy. But this character is a complete invention and tells us nothing about who these people really were. Now,
Did you see how dark that skin was from that painting? These Moors were very black African people, crossed over the Mediterranean, settled the Mediterranean. We did not invade, we settled. No one else was there. We settled that land. No one else was civilized there. I put it that way. No one else was civilized. We were indigenous to that land. We settled that land.
archaeologists and historians are starting to piece together the real story of the Moors in Spain. They're uncovering the remains of hidden cities, discovering the role of Muslims in the revival of the classics, and decoding the meaning of Islamic buildings. A fascinating picture has emerged. I'm going to use this new research to explore what happened when East met West in Europe. If there is one place which challenges the stereotype of the treacherous, bloodthirsty Moor, it's here, the Alhambra Palace in Granada.
The Alhambra Palace in Granada is an example of how we introduce math to Europeans.
The Alhambra is one of the most complete medieval Islamic palaces in the whole world. It was built by the Muslim kings of Granada in the 14th century at the height of their power. Its name means the red one because the dark surrounding soil has given its stones an earthy reddish hue. The marvel of the Alhambra is its mystery. Not a...
You always thought it was Europeans built them castles in Europe, didn't you? You always thought that because that's what they portray to you on television. That's the imagery that they have given to you, and they have portrayed you as living in huts. This is why these Europeans understand replacement theory, because they have done it. They have taken on your entire identity. You didn't know this. This is why Europeans are so fixated on replacement theory, because they have taken on your entire identity.
No account of life here survives. All its archives were incinerated in the fires of the Inquisition. But the Catholics couldn't bring themselves to destroy this place. The Alhambra is one of...
I want you to be clear about this. As you see, there's a pattern with Europeans. What do? Consistently, they burn books. They burn your history. Because you cannot keep a people oppressed if they know who they are. Right? See, I want you to believe that you came for these huts. That's why you hear certain black people say that Europeans brought us to America and took us out of huts. We thought we was living so horrible prior to slavery. But the truth is we was living in palaces prior to slavery. Truth is we had civilizations where literacy was high. We had civilizations where we had public libraries prior to the Europeans even discovering of America. And the reason why Christopher Columbus was welcomed by Isabella, the Queen of Spain, is because he came from Italy. Italy also was conquered and ran by Moors or civilized by Moors. So Christopher Columbus came to Spain with tales of America. He was being welcomed there because he had a strategy to just come to America, a place that they only heard about but had never seen or had no way of going to. And this is why Christopher Columbus went and got the captains of his ships were Moorish people. That's who brought him over here. This is why black people came over here way before the Mayflower. We came over here before any of Columbus' trips. We was already established in America. I will continue and show this. Be clear that the Europeans did not come to America. The Europeans did not come to America as we see here 5 years to after they took over Spain from the blacks. This is why black people want you to understand that we was already here in America prior. Martin Alfonso Pizan, Martin Pianzo was a Spanish marine shipbuilder, navigator, and explorer, eldest of the Pianson brothers. He sailed with Christopher Columbus on his first voyage to the New World in 1492 as captain of the Pianta. His youngest brother, Vincent Yang Pianso, was captain of the Nina, and the middle brother, Francisco Martin Pianso, was Mazier, first mate of the Pianta. So be clear, he used as navigators and captains of ships blacks from Spain in order to get to America. And we also say that Abu Bakr came to America in 1303, and we said that the Moors, the blacks that was in Spain, and the blacks in Morocco was constantly commingling and dealing in trade back and forth. So it's obvious that the Moors, who also was traveling the seas, knew about the Americas and the blacks. This is why the whites did not come to America until after they had fully conquered Spain from the blacks. And this is where the slaves came from, the blacks who were enslaved, they came from Europe. They was not enslaving us and shipping us from Africa. They was taking Europe from us. This is why white people understand what is replacement theory, because they have replaced us in who we are as a people, far as building, educators. They have also replaced us far as where we come from in land. Spain, Portuguese, Ireland, all those, Britain, all these was originally lands habitated by black people. This is where the miseducation of the Negro works to continue to hinder, to cause our downfall, because we are not aware of these things, so we do not see it re-happening again. This is why white people hate critical race theory. This is why white people hate you knowing your own history. This is why they are avoiding books. This is why they into book burning again.
Haven't always lived such separate lives. In the year 711 AD, Muslim forces invaded Spain and created a society so rich and so powerful it was the envy of the known world. This wasn't the rigid, ferocious Islam of our imaginations, but a progressive, sensuous, intellectually curious culture that for a number of spine-tingling years looked set to sweep through the whole of Europe. It is an incredible story, but one that has been systematically written out of history.
That's one thing they hide, is that our emphasis on education, how much we applied education to the people, how much we are the people who created universal education. We are the first to have public education. We are the first to have public libraries. We are the first to build public universities. This is something Europeans go through great lengths to hide.
After the Catholic monarchs took over the city of Granada, they began to destroy all evidence that the Muslims had ever been in Spain. In the following century, the Spanish authorities persecuted and expelled 300,000 Muslims and burned as many as 1 million Arabic books.
Do you see where the concept replacement theory come from? You never knew that these people existed and ruled Spain. So where's all these Europeans who claim to be Spanish people? This is why you have the concept of Spanish tall, dark, and handsome. This is why the Spanish and the Italians are look-alike. This is why they are both dark people. This is why, if you ever watched the movie Gladiator, they constantly called him the Spaniard, and they knew he was a Spaniard different from everyone else, because in real life the Spaniards were blacks, even when they was a part of the Roman army. So you have to understand, this was after Rome has failed.
This was an astonishing act of ethnic cleansing. It put an end to a civilization which had flourished in Spain for 700 years. These people have become known as the Moors. Propaganda, sparked by the Crusades, has given us an enduring image. The diabolical Moor, the dark-skinned, savage, alien enemy. But this character is a complete invention and tells us nothing about who these people really were. Now, archaeologists and historians are starting to piece together the real story of the Moors in Spain. They're uncovering the remains of hidden cities, discovering the role of Muslims in the revival of the classics, and decoding the meaning of Islamic buildings. A fascinating picture has emerged. I'm going to use this new research to explore what happened when East met West in Europe. If there is...
This is what we introduced to Europe. You have to understand, majority of Europe was illiterate. They was not building, they did not have mathematics in the form that we did.
One place which challenges the stereotype of the treacherous, bloodthirsty Moor. It's here, the Alhambra Palace in Granada. The Alhambra is one of the most complete medieval Islamic palaces in the whole world. It was built by the Muslim kings of Granada in the 14th century at the height of their power. Its name means the red one because the dark surrounding soil has given its stones an earthy reddish hue. The marvel of the Alhambra is its mystery. Not a single account of life here survives. All its archives were incinerated in the fires of the Inquisition. But the Catholics couldn't bring themselves to destroy this place. The Alhambra is one of the wonders of the medieval world. And by preserving it, they've kept a box of secrets that we can use to decode the civilization that built it.
The beauty of what we built was so magnificent. While they was trying to destroy all record of us, they could not bring themselves to tear down those buildings. They was just too magnificent.
Work of the walls and windows. This is the throne room. It was the symbolic centre of the palace, and here the Sultan had a kind of psychological advantage over his subjects. Whereas he'd have stood here in an eerie silhouette, they'd have been blinded by the light that came streaming in through these brightly coloured stained glass windows. The 19th century writer Washington Irving observed,
"It's impossible to contemplate this abode of Oriental manners without feeling the early association of Arabian romance. One almost expects to see some dark eye sparkling through the lattice. The abode of beauty is here, as if it had been inhabited but yesterday."
But this is far more than just a beautiful building. There's a specific reason why it feels so harmonious. The men who built it had a knowledge of complex geometry which had originated in the ancient world. The first man to set down these mathematical principles was the Greek philosopher Pythagoras. Pythagoras saw numbers everywhere in the universe, but his brilliance was to understand the importance of the ratio between them.
This, like, again, that's because Pythagoras studied philosophy, geometry, and medicine in Egypt for 22 years. So for her to say the first person to place this information down was Pythagoras, again, an attempt to steal black people history and our identity. The Greeks learned from the blacks. They want to still keep the Greeks as the fathers of civilization, but this is untrue. The Greeks, Pythagoras was educated in Egypt by the blacks as well. So we have to understand that we introduced education to the Europeans, not the other way around. The lie that we was all living in huts and that's where they came and got us from, we need to cancel that. We need to stop and understand that, no, they did not improve our livelihood in the way that we was living by bringing us to America and us going through slavery. No, we was living great lives. We had great empires. Spain, all throughout the Mediterranean, blacks built that up. Europeans did not create anything within that range. Everything was always built up off the backs of blacks. Off the backs of blacks. I don't care what is you talking about. They built their empires and their knowledge of nation building came off of a black civilization next to them. From Rome to the Greeks.
Professor Antonio Fernandez Puertas has spent his life studying the Alhambra. He's discovered that the whole of the building, from the ground plan to the wall decoration, is based around one single ratio.
I think everything is so perfect because everything is under control of the proportion. And very, very simple. You notice that there is something magic about these buildings. There is something marvelous in your surroundings. It's very, very simple. It's the relation between the ground and the elevations of the buildings. It's as simple as that. The king ordered a new palace. He has a limited area to build the palace. To west, east, and south, he was limited. Then he did something ingenious and beautiful.
The King of Granada asked his architects to harmonize each and every space within the palace according to a single set of proportions, a family of rectangles, each related to the other.
If you want to get proportional rectangle, you have the same base. Take the diagonal, put it up,
Yes.
and you got successive rectangle, proportional rectangle.
The key to the Alhambra's design is the simple relationship between the side of a square and its diagonal. If we use the diagonal to make a rectangle, and then the diagonal of that rectangle to make another, we get a progression of rectangles. The fourth rectangle is double the size of the first, and the diagonals in this sequence are in fact the square roots of 2, 3, 4, and 5. A magical sequence.
And are they doing all
Here you see black people introducing, with the Lambert, you see black people introducing geometry and mathematics to Europeans. This is evidence of that, of us introducing them to mathematics, to geometry, to building. This is why white people understand replacement theory. This is why they fear critical race theory, because they don't want you digging into your history. They don't want you knowing where you come from, who you are, because it will change who you are and how you conduct yourself today. It will change your perception in yourself. This is the fear that they have about critical race theory, about being woke. Not all that other garbage they talk about. This is what they fear about being woke.